I'm really pleased to be here today with my good friend Kim Dodd, Dean of the MSU College of Veterinary Medicine. We're going to have a really fun discussion about the topic of One Health. So, Kim, welcome.
Thank you, George. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, I know this is a topic of great interest to your college. It's a topic of great interest to MSU AgBioResearch, and it's an emerging area of interest and focus for the entire university. So, very timely topic to discuss. So, maybe before we get into the heart of that, why don't you share with us just a little bit about your background, which is actually quite interesting, and a little bit about your college to kind of set the framework for our conversation.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a veterinarian and a virologist by training, but started my career a bit more on the public health side of things. So after finishing my DVM and PhD from the University of California, Davis, well, actually, let me back up and say that I had a really unique educational journey. I did my DVM and PhD at UC Davis, but actually physically did my PhD at CDC in the Viral Special Pathogens branch, or VSPB. That's the branch that works on things like Ebola, Marburg, Rift Valley fever virus, important viruses that have devastating impacts not just on human populations, but animal populations as well. After that, I worked in Africa, working on building laboratory capacity after having done some Ebola outbreak work with CDC during my PhD. And after a few years in Africa, I had the opportunity to serve as director of USDA's Foreign Animal Disease Diagnostic Laboratory, or FADL, on Plum Island. Plum Island is located just off the coast of Connecticut in the Long Island Sound and is the national and international reference laboratory for high consequence animal diseases. So as you're probably gathering, I really like the terrible viruses. It's really not a normal love, I think, but it's important to me, and one of my real passions is trying to understand how we can continually enhance our ability to detect new infectious disease threats sooner and before they become an outbreak in people or in animals. So I'm really thrilled to now have the opportunity to be Dean of the College of Veterinary Medicine. Our college is really unique on campus. So just like everybody else, we have, of course, our educational mission. We train veterinarians, veterinary nurses, and veterinary scientists, master's, PhD, and DVM PhD students. We also have two big service units. One of them is the Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory, and I served as director there before becoming dean. I would argue it is the weirdest and most wonderful of all veterinary diagnostic labs and has played a really critical role in the ongoing high-path avian influenza outbreak. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that later. Um, and then our Veterinary Medical Center, which is the veterinary teaching hospital for the college. We have more than 20 different veterinary specialties within the hospital itself. And as the only vet school in the state of Michigan, we serve a really unique role as a referral hospital for the 1,000 veterinarians in Michigan. So we're the only 24/7, 365 tertiary care facility for small and large animals in the state of Michigan. So it's a really unique mission because we leverage both of those service units to support our research mission as well.
Wow, Kim, that's just fascinating. You have such an incredible background dealing with a whole host of what you could say are scary bugs or scary diseases or scary viruses or whatever. So, no better person to sort of talk about and help lead the efforts on campus in One Health. So, why don't you give us a little bit of background on that? Tell us a little bit more about One Health is and why you feel it's an important concept that it will encompass a breadth of research at MSU.
Yeah, so One Health at its simplest is the idea that human, animal, environmental, and plant health are all deeply entwined. And so to tackle any of the biggest challenges of our time, whether it is climate change, food security, water quality, or emerging infectious diseases, we need to work together across disciplines to be able to come up with really effective and sustainable solutions. And so I've been at MSU now for 4 years. And since I arrived, I have heard how MSU is so incredibly unique. And it's true, right? We've got two medical schools, a vet school, nursing school. We have ag and extension and ag bioresearch and nat sci and com art sci and engineering And I have to stop naming colleges because I'll forget someone if I try to do everybody. But the reality is we have an amazing breadth of expertise and interest and partnerships in our university itself. You couple that with our land grant mission, right, as the first land grant in the country, and our R1 research expertise, and huge partnerships across the state, we are uniquely poised to do big One Health things. And one example we've talked a lot about is cancer. So, as part of some conversations last year, I was talking to a few of the other deans and hearing a bit about work they were doing in cancer, and I got curious. And it turns out pretty much every college or unit on campus is doing something as it relates to cancer. So, for example, NatSci discovered cisplatin, one of the most important chemotherapeutic drugs of our time. In my college, we do clinical trials on dogs and cats with cancer, but it's not just the ones that seem so obvious in terms of doing cancer research, right? In the College of Communications, Arts, and Sciences, they study how changes in voice can help detect throat cancer earlier. In fact, I was just visiting the Forestry Innovation Center as part of the Spartan bus tour, and I learned there that they're looking at how you can purify maple sap to serve as a healthier electrolyte replacement for patients with cancer. Right? And then you zoom back over to Detroit, where the College of Music has these community music therapy programs for cancer patients. And so, taken together, again, just with that snapshot of just a portion of the work that's happening here on campus as it relates to cancer, really highlights how MSU is uniquely poised to be a leader in One Health.
So well said, Kim. You think about the topic of One Health, and it's an area, a unifying area where every single college at Michigan State University can envision themselves as part of it and actually contribute to work that will make a difference for people in the state of Michigan and beyond. Of course, I love the example from the Forestry Innovation Center because that's an ag bioresearch research facility. And who would have thought that sap from maple trees would have beneficial properties for cancer patients? Just fascinating. And there's so many things we haven't even thought about or touched on that can really make a difference in this area. So by focusing on that and helping people become more aware and building new interdisciplinary teams, we can execute the Spartans Will mission and do work that's really going to make a difference consistent with the land grant mission. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I couldn't be more excited. AgBioResearch is scientists have been doing work in this area really for a long time, and it's the future is so bright. I can't wait to see how much progress we will have made, 1, 2, 5, 10 years down the road. So yeah, right there with you. You also play an important leadership role in the effort on campus. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Thanks, George. So I have the privilege of co-chairing the One Health Council currently operating on campus. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second because it is the follow-on to the Health Sciences Council, which was brought together in summer of 2024 by President Guskiewicz not long after he started at MSU. Our goal there was to reimagine the future of health sciences at MSU. For the last few years, the Office of Health Sciences, which covered the College of Nursing, College of Osteopathic Medicine, and College of Human Medicine, had really been sort of a core center on the university. And there was a question of how this might be reimagined to be a bit more broad-based in the future. So during the Health Sciences Council, several folks from across campus, about a dozen people, were brought together to again start to reimagine what the future of health sciences at MSU might be. From that report, which was submitted at the end of 2024, the president identified three big, bold ideas that are now under consideration by the One Health Council. Those three big, bold ideas are the potential unification of the colleges of osteopathic medicine and human medicine into a single medical school. The second is the establishment of a College of Health Sciences, which is an opportunity to bring together health professions programs and health science research from across campus. And the third, to develop a campus-wide interdisciplinary research effort, currently referred to as the One Health Research Network. And George, I know you've been on that task force, so it'd be fun to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, Having been a part of this process, Kim, on the research task force and kind of watching the process as it's evolved, I just want to thank you for your leadership as well. These type of initiatives are really critical to our mission, and it takes time and takes effort. And everyone has a day job as well. So you're doing a fantastic job. We're right behind you, and we look forward to seeing how this all evolves in the future. So kind of under the concept more of research and the research task force, or maybe even drilling a little bit more into the work in your college, let's talk a little bit more about some specific examples of One Health research that are foundational in your college. You already gave a great example, examples that are relevant to our partners in agriculture and also relevant to people in communities. So wherever you want to go, whether it's
Yeah.
highly pathogenic avian influenza, antimicrobial resistance, or you name it, let's just have a fun discussion about all the great research that's going on and the problems that we can solve together in the future.
Well, you posed that question to a virologist who's in a full-time administrator role. So let's talk about viruses. Let's
Okay.
talk about high path avian
Okay.
influenza. So, because I'm really, really proud of our, as in the state of Michigan and Michigan State University's response to this outbreak. So, just a little bit of context for folks who probably aren't following high path avian influenza as closely as George and I have been for the last few years. But the outbreak actually started in Michigan in early 2022. Now, high path avian influenza is defined as an avian influenza virus that causes significant morbidity and mortality, lots of sickness, and high death rates in domestic poultry. This occurred again, started in Michigan in early 2022. Now, normally these outbreaks sort of burn out because our response effort is all surrounded or surrounds rapid depopulation of infected birds. So you try to control the course of the outbreak as quickly as possible. Now, one of the challenges with this particular outbreak is that the virus is both highly infectious and also really good at infecting multiple species. So, unlike previous outbreaks of high path avian influenza, where it's primarily domestic birds that are impacted, in this outbreak, we've seen high mortality in wild birds, which has provided unique opportunities for wild mammals who come across dead birds to then feed on those birds and become infected themselves. So, we have seen dozens of species that have succumbed to infections of high path avian influenza this year, which was already odd enough and complicated enough for a disease response. And then a year and a half ago, we suddenly saw the virus move from domestic poultry into dairy cattle. And I don't know about you, George, but that's not something that I saw coming.
I would have never guessed that. No way.
Yeah, right. In fact, again, as a virologist, we nerdy virologists get together on Zoom these days because that's what we do. And we were talking about reports of this weird disease in dairy cattle in Texas, and we're throwing around possibilities, and not one of us thought that bird flu might be
Mhm.
responsible. But indeed it is, and it has created a really unique One Health challenge. So we know that high path avian influenza viruses can cause disease in people. Luckily, in this outbreak, even though we're now stretching into almost 4 years, we've seen a relatively small number of human cases. But these are all people who are exposed to the virus by working closely on poultry facilities or by handling infected dairy cattle as well.
Yeah, what an experience. And I know we're both proud of the response that MSU had very quickly when we first learned of this disease, and more specifically, it's spreading to dairy cattle. Um, a big point of pride is the fact that AgBioResearch was able to provide funding very rapidly
I was
within
just
within days to weeks, not months or years. So scientists in your college and CVM could get out on farms and start collecting data. Our scientists oftentimes rely on writing grants to the federal government to fund their work. Those can take months to years. It would have been too late. So the answer is, in the diagnostic lab, your shop played a huge role in this. MSU responded right away with a commitment to do everything we can to help our producers with answers to how to deal with this unexpected and certainly in the case of poultry, debilitating disease.
Yeah. And I mean, we had the nation's eyes on us. We were
Uh-huh.
among the first states where we saw high path avian influenza in dairy cattle. And there were so many questions. How is it spreading within herds? How does it spread herd to herd? What are the best sample types to test in this case? And again, like largely due to the support from AgBioResearch, we had researchers in the College of Vet Medicine who were able to get on farm side by side with state and federal officials to start collecting samples for testing to try to tackle and answer these questions. I mentioned previously that before coming to MSU, I worked at USDA, where I had a unique sort of national level role and had the opportunity to see dynamics in different states. And I'd always been really impressed and admired Michigan, the state of Michigan's interactions. So when you're dealing with an outbreak like this, it's not just about the academic institution. It's also in partnering with the State Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. It's partnering with the state public health department, and even in this case, with the Department of Natural Resources, right? Because there was a wildlife component as well. And it is a really cool thing to be part of a team here in Michigan where there's such a strong history of collaboration and partnership, which is a huge part of how we were able to respond so rapidly. Because it wasn't just the funding from AgBio that was able to get us on the farms. We needed to have the trust and the support of state and federal officials and producers to allow us to do the research. And I can tell you that talking to colleagues in other states, there were some real challenges for other diagnostic labs or other veterinary researchers to be able to work on some farms because of a lack of that trust. And I've thought a lot about it because I truly believe Michigan is unique in the strength of that relationship. And I wonder if you see that too, and what your thoughts are for how we got where we are in that regard.
Yeah, Kim, anytime I have the opportunity to talk about my job, I talk about how special Michigan is, how special Michigan agriculture is. And it's because of the partnerships. It's the partnerships with our agriculture industries. It's the partnerships with state agencies. It's the partnerships within MSU that are putting into action the mission of land grant universities, the state of Michigan's university, to solve problems that are relevant to not just agriculture. Agriculture is important, but also people in every single community in the state. It's what really makes this place special and makes my job special. And you're right, I hear the same thing. It doesn't happen everywhere. And it's something we cherish, and we're all committed to doing everything we can to not just maintain, but grow those relationships even further in the future. So, kind of talking about the broader impact, maybe, you know, farmers are struggling right now. The agriculture industries are struggling. It's a tough time to make a living. You know, a lot of challenges. And when a poultry farm is facing decimation with losing huge numbers of birds, when a dairy farm is threatened with an unknown disease, not knowing really what the implications are going to be, that's scary. But there's also impacts on the general public and consumers as well that I think are worth mentioning. You know, if we talk about what we've experienced in terms of the cost of eggs, we were in an inflationary climate, but highly pathogenic avian influenza has an impact on the cost that people pay when they go to a grocery store to buy a dozen eggs. That's the reality. We also talk about keeping our food supply safe. Back to this One Health concept again. Diseases that occur in wild animals, diseases that occur in farm animals, we have to make sure that the appropriate measures are taken and surveillance is done to keep our food supply safe. And if a disease does have the ability to jump to another species or humans, to be on it right away. So talk about that aspect a little bit.
I love that question. So I'm really proud because the Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory is USDA's regional laboratory for emerging infectious diseases. And so there are 5 laboratories with that designation across the country, and they're working together on new diagnostic capabilities to help detect new epidemic or pandemic strains before they can emerge. So some folks may have heard this stat before that 70 to 75% of new infections in humans arise from an animal reservoir. Ebola, high path avian influenza are examples of that, viruses that can jump from one species to another and cause disease in people. So if you think about it that way, really the veterinary diagnostic laboratory plays a really important role in trying to detect any of those agents before they have a chance to become a problem in the human population. And so historically, and this is true, I'll use actually a human example too, because it's cold and flu season, everyone is sniffling and sneezing, right? And so generally, when you go to your doctor's office, you've got a cold or cough, they collect samples, and they're going to rule out flu, um, RSV, COVID, et cetera. And those are individual tests that tell you, yes, you have it, or no, you don't. And we do the same thing when we get samples from a sick animal or a sick herd of animals. There are a certain number of possible causes, and we test for each of those. And often we find an answer, and we're able to report that back to the farmer, producer, or pet owner. But sometimes all of the tests come back negative, which leaves us with an important question of what is causing this, and is this something that we need to know? Is it something new that we need to know more about? So over the course of the last few years, our laboratory and others have been working on developing new diagnostic capabilities that allow us to take a single sample, sequence the entire contents of that sample, which theoretically allows us to know any infectious agent that's in there. So now, instead of having to know what you're looking for and test one test at a time, this allows you to effectively read through the whole sample and pull out any potential causative agents. This is a more efficient way to allow us to determine what infectious disease agents might be included in there, but also to detect new or potentially emerging viruses. And so that's a big effort that we've had underway. Just in May, the Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory hosted a nationwide symposium with this as a focus. We had representatives from nearly, I think it was about 50 laboratories from across the country who came together to share best practices and really think about how we, as veterinary diagnostic laboratories, can best position ourselves to play that critical role of detecting the next big thing, whether it ends up being a disease of animals or people, before it becomes too big of a thing.
Fascinating. And it's such important work. So, Kim, there's many examples of the strong partnership between ag bioresearch and the College of Veterinary Medicine. And we don't have time to go into all of those, but, some really important areas. And I'm sure I'm going to leave a few out. We talk about basic research on diseases in farm animals. You just explained in very real terms why that's important, not only to our producers in livestock, poultry, but why it's important to food safety, why it's important to human health. We support faculty in your college that use farm animal models for human disease. Another fantastic topic that we could talk in depth about. We support faculty in your college that do work on the microbiome, the
Mhm.
microbiome in the gut, all the microorganisms in the gut that influence function of the animals in response to everything from disease to nutrition and so many fascinating topics that all fit under this One Health umbrella. I wish we had time to talk about all of those, but the reality is we probably don't, but we may get into that on another occasion. So, any last thoughts from you about the One Health research focus on campus and where you think we're headed and what people can look forward to in the future?
Yeah, I'm actually wondering if you could help me with something.
Sure.
So, as one of the opportunities I have as co-chair of the One Health Council
Mhm,
is that I've been able to look at survey feedback we just
mhm,
sent out that One Health Council survey to
mhm,
faculty, staff, and students across campus, and we had an enormous response. And so I've been reading, going through a lot of the
uh-huh.
comments because they're so important. But one of the comments I've heard a few times about the One Health initiative is that it seems really focused on the medical schools and the College of
Uh-huh,
Health Sciences. And there's been
uh-huh,
lots of questions about what about vet med? What about
uh-huh,
ag? What about
uh-huh.
animal science? And I see the connection, but I wondered if you could help me by sharing your perspective of how looking at some of these two new colleges may directly support One Health writ large, including animal and environmental health.
Oh, yeah, great question, Kim. I've been pleased to be part of the research task force, and one of my goals is to expand that umbrella very, very, very wide because there are so many areas within the ag bioresearch portfolio that are relevant to the concept of One Health. You think about all the things that impact human health. It's and infectious disease is a part of that, but nutrition is also has plays a big role on human health. And the food people eat, the availability of food, the nutritive quality of food is a direct determinant of that. That comes directly from agriculture. The environment as a whole has such an impact on not just health of humans, but health of animals and health of plants. And it's this interaction of all those components together really is the foundation of One Health that really gets me excited about this initiative and all of the opportunities, whether we're talking about issues in the state with contamination of water or soil with the chemical PFAS to a whole host of other issues. So water quality can impact plant health, animal health, water quality can impact human health. How do all these things fit together? And I see so many opportunities by bringing the campus community together for novel, unique partnerships. Folks that work in, animal health, working with people in the medical schools, folks that study soil science, looking at the interaction with local food in urban areas and how we can help people be more efficient in raising food and reduce some of the human health effects if, people are trying to grow food on areas that were contaminated for industrial reasons or who knows what. There's so much potential. And this is what is going to make MSU different from all these other universities have said they are leading in One Health. We will lead because we have all of that at our disposal. All of those things are integral components of the mission of Team MSU, and we can bring everyone together. I get so excited about all the problems we can solve. All that really impact communities in
Yeah.
Michigan and beyond. And that's what it's all about. That's why we do research. We do research to make a difference for people in the state of Michigan, this country, and beyond.
Yeah.
And
And
we're going
like
to get it done.
we're going to get it done and we're going to get out county by county, community by
Yeah,
community and
exactly.
make a difference. And so, yeah, here's to making the world a better place by tackling one health challenge at a time.
Here, here. Well, Kim, thanks a lot. Great conversation. We're going to have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you, and I'll
Okay.
look forward to our next opportunity to chat about One Health.